Okay, I'm Hewie Poplock, and I'm going to talk a little bit about cutting the cord, or some things to consider before you fire your cable company. If I can get this to move forward. Just a reminder, at the end of this presentation, I have a survey that I'd like you to take. The address is on the screen. It will be on the last two slides, and somewhere along the way I'll post it in the chat box as well. Please wait till you see the presentation before you take the survey. But I have found that the survey really helped me from the first time I did this presentation till now. There were some things that I really needed to explain better, or that I needed to add, and by taking that survey, it will really help me and future presentations that I do on the topic. And saying that, the topic is very fluid, so it changes quite often anyway. So if there's something you need help with in addition to it, add that in the survey and it will really help me. There's a couple of terms. One of them I use more than the other in this, but it's a couple of terms you probably aren't aware of, but when you're talking about cutting of the cord, is OTA, or over-the-air TV, or OTT, which means over the top, or using the internet to access television. So the topics for today. My reasoning for cutting the cord. Over the air, we're going to talk about antenna web, antennae, in other words, the various antennas that are available. DVR for over the air. Over the top means over the internet, and we're going to talk about TV streaming, hardware for streaming, streaming services, streaming channels, local TV and streaming, and other ways to get TV. We're going to talk a little bit about broadband providers, getting your telephone through the internet via, which is Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP, and then a list of resources. And to talk about the list of resources, I'm also providing APCUG with a list of all of the websites where I got charts and different information that's going to be presented. That will also be posted on the website, along with the recording of this and a copy of the slides. So all that should be available. Some of it should be available in the next few days, and then the video takes a little bit of time to get that up online. Okay, here's an early TV with a remote control. That's me in front of our 19-inch Majestic TV, which was our first TV. And when I showed this, my better half, Robin, said, "Oh, wait a minute, I got a TV picture too." So here's her family. They had 4 remotes for their one TV. Here's an early schedule from my hometown, TV schedule from 1950. Notice they went on the air at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they signed off at 12 o'clock. And that was the only channel that was available. And you'll notice next to some of the TV programs, it shows different sponsors. Whole program, one sponsor sponsored the whole program. Okay, between 2012 and 2017, traditional TV viewing by everyone has changed, but between the 18 and 24-year-old, it dropped almost 10 hours a week. And there's some other figures here, but the bottom, in other words, in the space of 5 years, close to half of this age group's traditional TV viewing is migrated to other activities or to streaming. So they're either not watching TV, or they're watching TV through streaming. TV is changing. TV viewing is changing. And I found this to be a very interesting statistic. According to Nielsen, the company that measures TV viewing and radio viewing and so on, most Americans on the average have 189 cable TV channels, and they only watch 17 of them. Think about yourself. There's only a handful of channels that you actually watch, even if you subscribe to them all. Okay, here's why I began to look at cutting the cord. And a close-up of that. In February, my bill was at $165.78 for cable. 2 televisions, 2 DVRs, and internet. And I paid a little bit extra for a little faster internet. In March, it was going to go to $215.56. So it was going to go up close to $50. And I said, this is ridiculous. I am not going to do that. So I called their support and their hotline and said, if you can't help me, I am going elsewhere. And so they sent me this letter after giving me a number on the phone, and they said, okay, we can give you it's going to go to $176.45. I'm not changing anything. I'm going from $165 with all the taxes to $176 plus the taxes. That would have ended up being about $192. So I'm going up almost $30 a month for nothing extra because I was getting some kind of a special that expired and they wouldn't give me anything else. So I said, okay, I'm going to cancel then. But before I told them that for sure, I started searching, and that's what I'm going to be talking about through here is some of the things that I did and some of the things that are available and so on. And what I ended up doing, to go to the end first, and then we'll backtrack. I ended up switching to Frontier Fios in this area, and they have a special for 1 year of $40 a month, and that included the installation and the router. And so I am getting 150 megabits per second up and 150 megabits per second down for $40 a month. And that's the only service I get from any cable company is internet. And then I started looking at all of the services, the streaming services that are out there. I ended up with Directv Now, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But that ended up with their taxes and so on. It's $40. So I'm paying $43.95. When I signed up for it a couple of months ago, it was $35, and then it went to $40. And I understand they're thinking about even raising it again. So you can't get away from it. Directv Now is different than Directv. It's the same company. AT&T owns both, but Directv Now is their streaming service. And I'm going to talk about what a streaming service is and so on shortly. So hang in there. So I did cut the cord. Now, let me explain. When I first did this presentation, it was very confusing to beginners. So if you're not a beginner, some of this might be familiar to you, but if you are a beginner, maybe I can kind of have you understand some of the things before we start throwing the terms around. So TV today is like this. You have cable. AT&T Uverse, Verizon Fios, Charter, Cox, Spectrum, whatever your cable company is, and then they send it. You subscribe to it. They send it to a cable modem or a router for the internet, and it goes to a cable box for your TV, and then from there it goes to your television. If you have satellite, you've got DirecTV probably or Dish. There are probably some others out there, but those are the two biggest ones. As I mentioned, DirecTV is owned by AT&T. That goes to you get a dish, and then the signal goes to a channel box. From there, it goes to your TV. If you have over the air, you have an antenna of some sort. It may be indoors, it may be outdoors, it may be in your attic, but you're going to get some local channels that goes to your antenna, as I said, and then from there, your antenna is plugged into your television. So that's how you receive TV in the most sense. But if you want to stream, excuse me, there are some things that you need. One, you need an internet service provider. Again, that's usually your cable company. AT&T, Uverse, Verizon, Fios, Charter, Cox, Spectrum, and many of you are in areas you're going to have other companies as well. From there, you have to have some piece of equipment that's going to utilize and get that internet service. Most of them work with Wi-Fi. Some of them will also or will work with a direct wire, or some have a choice of both, of either, and you can choose either one. You got your Amazon TV, your Apple TV, a Roku, a Chromecast, a PlayStation, an Xbox, or a smart TV, and then that plugs into your TV. And then there's content that's available for streaming through one of those services. And you have Fubo TV, Philo, Directv Now, Sling TV, Hulu, YouTube TV, and Watch TV. Some of the subscription services may be available for devices. Now, I didn't put in Netflix in this because Netflix is streaming, but it's not streaming any live TV. It's all recorded. But it goes into the same category. Hulu does both. And some of these others do both as well. From those services, it goes to your device, and then you use that device to find the channels and to use them, use their application to watch the TV. Each of the streaming services has plans that include some of your favorite channels. This is where it really gets confusing, and you really got to do some research. So are you going to use Fubo? You're going to use Philo? You're going to use Directv Now, Sling, Hulu, YouTube TV, or Watch TV? Well, what you got to do is, excuse me, what you've got to do is really sit down and make a list of everybody that's going to watch TV in your home and mark down what programs you have to have, or what stations or what networks do you need to have, because that's going to determine which one of these you use. Now, in our house, I like A&E because I like to watch live PD every weekend, and that's 6 hours of broadcast. And Robin wants her Hallmark stations. And there's actually 3 Hallmark stations that you can get. Some of the services get the Hallmark channel. Some have the Hallmark mysteries and drama, and some have just a Hallmark drama channel, and some have all 3. So you have to, and those were the criteria that I had to use. Plus, I want to have some of the news channels, and I was hoping to get the local stations as well. And most of them now do that, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. One of the websites that I used for a lot of my research to start with was Cord Cutter News, and I continue to watch them. They have blogs almost every day, several articles. They have a good beginner's guide to cord cutting. It's a good website to use as your reference, and you'll see there's a lot of other ones that I use as well. Now, for over the air, you need an antenna. What kind of an antenna do you need? Some of you live in a city. Some of you live in a suburb. Some of you live out in the country. Some live quite a ways from a major city, and some live way far from a major city. So there's a website called Antenna Web, and there's 2 or 3 other ones as well. You enter your zip code or your full address in there and hit submit. And when you do, it will give you some information on how close you are and what you're going to need to get various stations in your region. To get it up close, what you'll see here is it shows me what channels I'll get with different color designations and how far away they are and how high my antenna is going to have to be. So and some of you who live in a city, one of those little things that stick to the window is probably more than capable. Where I live, I'm about 50 miles from a lot of the TV station antennas, where they beam from. So it requires me having a little bit better antenna system if I decide to use over the air. Here are some examples of some antennas. The three on the left side are indoor antennas, and the other two are examples of outdoor antennas. Now, indoor and outdoor antennas can go in the attic. You got to have enough cable to get to them. But they can be inside. They don't have to be outside, even though if they're an outside antenna. But the higher up they are, the better the reception, and the less you have in the way of like walls and cement block and so on. You'll get better reception. So if it's outdoors, you're better off. Here's one of my neighbor's homes. He has an outdoor antenna, and that's the one you see in the center. And if you look carefully at the screen, the picture on the left, you'll see the antenna. And I said, well, you know what? You almost can't see it. So I did a little close-up from that picture, and you can see he's got it mounted on the eave of his home. Now there's a wire that goes from that inside his home. He has two TVs. So there's a splitter that's inside, so that antenna works for both televisions. That's the only television reception they get. They have no cable. They have no streaming at all through the internet. They have no internet service in their home. They use their phones for any internet. So they have one wire coming from that antenna, a splitter, and they're getting about 65 channels. Now, of those 65, there are a lot that they don't watch. They don't speak of another language, and a lot of the channels are in other languages. A lot of them are religious stations, so they may or may not utilize those. But there's a total of 65 channels that they do get. And we're, as I said, about 50 miles from most of the major TV stations up in the Tampa area. I'm outside of Tampa. Along with over the air, there is the possibility that you can have a DVR, or a digital video recorder. This is a couple examples of them. Here's one. Actually, the model from TiVo changed for their over-the-air digital video recorder. I didn't have a picture of it when I put this together, but it actually looks the same. But the information on the right would be a little bit different. I believe that's the same price. It just was released in the last couple of weeks. But TiVo has a box for about $250. The Tableau is about $150. And again, you've got to have an outside antenna plugged into this, and this requires power as well. And it will it has storage of about 64 gigabytes of space. Here's a chart that compares some. There are some that are cheaper. They won't do as much. They probably don't work as well. They have fewer tuners and so on. So there are a lot of options if you want to have over the air that you can have video recording as well. If you look at this next slide, you'll see this item is going to be released November 14th. It's not even out yet. All of this stuff is so new, and it's happening very fluidly, so things are changing on a regular basis. But this one is going to be about $229 for 2 tuners and $279 for 4 tuners. And what I was reading is recommended you get the 4-tuner one. Is you're better off. You'll make the most of it that way. Okay, now all of the services that are available for streaming. This was just a really neat graphic that I grabbed, but what it boils down to is you've got YouTube and PlayStation, Hulu, Fubo TV, and so on, the ones I've already mentioned. One thing I need to prepare you for is streaming is not faultless. The picture on the top left you see often. Even with the Directv Now that I have, several times an hour, and actually sometimes even several times, every several minutes, I'll get a black flash on the screen, then it comes back. Or you'll see that little thing going around like you do on your computer where it timed out and it's buffering, and it takes a few minutes or a few seconds for it to come back on. But when you switch channels, you may also get something like it's taking longer than expected to load your video, your patience is most appreciated, or something went wrong, we're having trouble with this channel, please check back later. This happens a lot more than I'm comfortable with, but I live with it. If this is something that bothers you, you might consider not cutting the cord. It's all very new. It's all changing. They update and they try to fix these things, but it does. I read some of the forums about these things, and some people just every time it does it, they go into a tizzy. And if that bothers you that much, might not be the choice to cut the cord. As I said, this is the one that I'm using, Directv Now. Stream Live, this is their ad. It's 65 channels, 65 plus channels for $40 a month. Most of these services do give you 7 days free. And I tried several of them before I settled on Directv Now. And I'm now, as of last night, I'm trying Fubo TV for 7 days, and I may switch for a short period of time. The nice thing about it is you're not on a contract. You can switch these every month if you want and try a different one, or try it for a while and say, oh, I don't like this one, or I heard that Directv Now has fixed some things, or they've added their DVR is now out of beta and it's working better, and so I'm going to go back to it, that sort of thing. So you might want to think about that in terms of it. You can change back and forth very easily. All you have to do is tell them you're going to pay them, put it on your credit card for a month, and you've got that service. And then tell the other one at the end of the month, stop, and so they don't charge you for the next month. Once they charge you for the month, you paid for that month, so you're going to get it for that month. This is a chart comparing some of them. The one thing about this chart, the only thing is I got circled is the maximum simultaneous streams. Something else to consider if you're going to cut the cord. And that is the maximum simultaneous streams. In other words, how many TVs can you have? You'll notice under Directv Now, it says 2. Well, if you got 3 TVs that it's you in the bedroom, there's one in the living room and one in the kids' bedroom, or one in somebody else's bedroom, or you've got 3 TVs that are going to be on, and it only sends out 2 streams, and the third one's going to say, hey, the other 2 streams are being used, you can't use this. And so that may not be the one for you. However, I believe Directv Now is adding a third, or they're going to charge you for a third. So this, again, is changing with all of them. I'm trying Fubo right now, and it looks like it has 2. So I can get it on my Chromebook, and I can get it on the living room TV. And if I shut off the Chromebook, I can go into the bedroom TV and have it on the bedroom and the living room at the same time. So you need to look at how many streams it can do at one time. And especially if you're going to be doing video, any kind of video recording. Well, no, I'm wrong in that. Never mind. Cross that out. Okay, now, what about local TV and if you're doing streaming? Well, most of these streaming services now provide local TV. This is a big chart. I'm just showing you what the chart looks like. Let's zoom in a little closer and then zoom in a little bit closer than that. Let's take a look at this. The top part of that list was the top 50 markets, and then there was a whole bunch of other ones. I just chose a few of them and put them up there. So let's say I'm in the Tampa, St. Petersburg area. I have Directv Now. ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC I can get here through Directv. It's a channel on that service. But if I lived in Rochester, which is number 14 down on that pink side, I don't have access to the ABC, CBS, or NBC. I only have Fox, and then my TV and CW are not included either. So I don't get the local channels. I'm going to have an outside antenna for the local channels. I'm trying Fubo right now, and if you look at the Tampa St. Pete area, notice there's no ABC or NBC on this list. Well, they've added NBC in the last few weeks. So, but I can't get NBC. Well, Robin likes to watch her Dancing with the Stars. If we switch to that, I'm going to have to figure out some kind of an antenna system that she can get the local ABC station through an antenna. So these are things that you have to weigh when you're looking at what's available through these streaming services and streaming channels. Okay, again, these were some of the products and approximately what they cost, but it's deceiving because Netflix says, yeah, $7.99, but it's usually around $11 to $13 for most of the movies. But that's all. That's not really. That's not streaming live. That's streaming recorded. So this just shows some of the products that are out there. Spectrum in our area is quite new, and they're starting something for streaming, because they're losing people like me from their cable, and so they're trying to have a streaming choice. And they want $24, but by the time you finish fooling around, and it's only 10 cable channels plus your local channels, and with all the taxes and fees, it's going to be $30 to $35. So it's not much different than getting 65 plus channels from Directv Now. So I'd get a lot more channels by using Directv Now than I would the Spectrum TV choice. And then they want extra money, and you get, if you want a DVR, and if you want the premium TV channels. By premium TV channels, they're talking about HBO and Showtime and so on. Another chart looking at the same information. This one along the left-hand side are the pieces of equipment that you use to plug into your TV to get the streaming channels, and then streaming services. And then along the top are the different streaming services and which ones work with what pieces of equipment. So if you have PlayStation, you can't use the Directv Now. If you have Hulu, there's not Android TV for it. Let's see which one else. A Roku, pretty much all of them work with. iOS, Philo doesn't work with. So if you have an iPad, that's one you can't use on the iPad. As far as a PC goes, Sling TV has an app, but a lot of these on your PC, you can sign in through the web and still watch them. Some you can't. Actually, on the bottom it says web, so that's you use your browser and you're going through it. So it looks like all of them work with the with your browsers. Again, another chart with some different ways of looking at all of these things. The DVRs do have storage limitations. However, I noticed Fubo, you get 50 hours free with the service. If you want if you want 500 hours, I think it's like $5 or $10 more a month. So they give you extra storage for additional money. Now, what can you get through these services? Well, as I mentioned, you get various networks, and different streaming services have different networks. They contract with them, and this sometimes changes. So, but this is an example of what some of them may be. You may get all of them and pay more money to get more. But these are all the channels that do stream through one service or another, or through paying for extra channels. And again, this is another chart looking at it a different way, where you can look at the various networks that are available and then which services use them. And as I said, I do have a reference sheet where you can find this chart and then look at it, because obviously I've only got a few on here to show you the kind of information that's available. But you can go through it and find which channels you need to have, and then find out which services carry them. The AT&T Watch TV channel list, just this is something new. These are all the channels that it does, but in addition to the channels on this list, BET, Comedy Channel, MTV2, Nicktoons, and so on were added to Watch TV in late July. Again, here are the various ways in which you get the channels to your TV. You get it through the internet, and it goes to one of these contraptions or one of these pieces of equipment. You've got the Roku in the upper left. You've got the Chromecast next to it. You may have a Roku TV or some other smart TV. Down on the, you got the Xbox and the PlayStation. Down on the bottom, Amazon Fire has a whole family of things. Some are built into the TVs. Some are boxes. Some are little, well, you can see what's there. And then, of course, there's Apple TV on the lower right. If you have a Roku on your TV, it's built in. So this is what your screen may look like. Well, this is with just using a Roku plugged in. And then if you have a Roku TV or a smart TV, this is what it may look like, where you have cable TV is one of the choices. When you click it, it switches over. So it makes changing back and forth between your Roku and cable channels much easier, much smoother. But you don't need to have a smart TV to use Roku. You have the little box that plugs into one of the HDMI plugs on the back of your TV, and you have to change the input from the cable or the outside antenna to one of the HDMI channels that has the Roku plugged into it. These are this is an example of some of the channels that Roku has. The Roku box has hundreds, if not thousands, of channels that you can have. Some are free, some you have to subscribe to, some you have to subscribe to a service that then you have to verify that you're using that service and then get it free. But there's broadcast networks, there's video index sites, there's video websites, and there's movies. Some of them are free. I think I have 72 channels set up on my Roku. Some work, some don't, because they were things that I paid for that I am no longer paying for. But some are totally free. Some you get some things free, but if you want more, it costs more, and so on. So there's a lot of channels available for your Roku, depending upon what your interests are. Sports is another topic altogether. If you're into sports, it may cost you a lot more money. And you may be better off staying with your cable if you get what you want. But you get a lot more when you stream. Like the NBA has a league pass for $200 a year, or if you just want one, if you just follow one team, it's $120 a year, or you can just sign up for individual games. National Hockey League, the Major League Soccer, and Fubo TV has all kinds of sports services at about $10 a month, in addition to having the Fubo service as well. This I just put up because I made an animated GIF with all of the channels. But you can also get, let's see, I guess I don't have them. I don't want to leave that running. It'll drive you nuts. But what happens is Roku has also made arrangements with a lot of local TV stations that you can get their newscasts. It's only their newscasts, and I don't think it's live. It might be live when they're on, but it's not 24-hour news. It's 11 o'clock news, maybe on at 11, or you can go to it, let's say at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, or when you get up in the morning, you can watch the 11 o'clock news. Or if you get up on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, you can watch the 6 o'clock news from your local TV station. In a lot of cases, through your Roku, and it doesn't cost you anything. If you're into NFL games, NFL has several ways in which you can watch them as well. And again, those are for additional fees. There's all kinds of plans. I didn't put them in here because they change almost daily. What plans are available, and there's so many choices and combinations of depending on how many teams you follow and so on, to how much it's going to cost, that I didn't put it in. What you can do is go out and do some searching and find out which games you want to watch. But there is the ability to watch pretty much all of the games if you want to spend the money, if you're into it that much. So whether you're joining the cord-cutting revolution and fantasy football dynasty, where you live outside your team's market, you need a good way to get your NFL fix online. Unfortunately, the options are many. They're also extremely complicated. To help, we've compiled this comprehensive guide, how to stream the entire 2018-19 season from opening kickoff to the playoffs. So put on your jerseys, and I think that's listed in my list of resources. Again, the TV channel sample, these are samples of some of the news channels that you can get online. As you can see, there's Houston, there's Sarasota, there's San Diego, depending on where you are, and then some of the national, just NBC News has a channel, Fox News has a channel, and so on. So most of them you can get through Roku at any time. Now, besides all of the streaming, to confuse you even more, you can have Plex, and you might have heard of Kodi. Plex allows you to be your own server of all of the movies, for instance, and so on. If you have a big movie collection, you have a big TV series collection, and so on, you can put those on a hard drive or on a computer, make that a server, and then use Plex to access them. And so you can be your own streaming service for yourself. And that's what Plex basically is. There is a fee for that, but it's just another option that's available. The other thing is, if you go to any flea market, street market, we have a lot of the art shows and so on where people have tents on the streets and so on during the week. In Florida, we have them all year long, and in your area, you may have them in the summer. But you may see a tent, and they're selling one of these little boxes. They generally run around $225 to $300. And they say they're a Kodi box, or they're something similar to a Kodi box. And what a Kodi box is, Kodi is software, and there's nothing wrong with Kodi. It's an open source software, and what some people have found that they can do is they can put together streaming services from Europe and stream pirated not software, but pirated TV programs and movies through these boxes by using Kodi as the basis. There's nothing wrong with Kodi, but the people who write applications to work with Kodi are streaming this stuff basically pirated. At this point, most people can get it, and nothing's going to happen to you. They are starting to crack down in Europe, and eventually they're going to crack down here. So I don't recommend it. I just want you aware of what these things do. You get movies that are still in the theaters. However, some of them may have Chinese subtitles. They may be of such a quality because somebody took the the picture of the movie sitting in the theater with a camera. And so you see people walking by carrying a, a container of popcorn, and the video is off kilter and is not very clear, but some people are willing to watch a movie that way just because they can. So, but some of them are actually either standard definition, high definition, or 4K through these services as well. And a lot of them are very recent movies or very recent TV programs with all of the advertising cut out. So those things are available. I don't recommend it because eventually there's going to be crackdowns on it, and you could, your cable company could say, well, you're streaming illegal stuff, we're going to cut you off. Your internet provider can do that, or they may charge you extra for all of the streaming you're doing. Again, some of the streaming services that are the internet providers that are available are AT&T, Fios, CenturyLink, Xfinity, HughesNet, Cox, Frontier, and so on. Everyone has their own plans. Every area has their own plans. Every neighborhood has their own plan. For instance, I have the Frontier Fios. Well, Fios isn't available in every neighborhood, but I can get gigabit speed if I want to pay for it. But you may not be able to where you are. So you have to look to see what's available. And if you're in a development where all your homeowners association pays for cable, where everybody gets the same cable company, or if you're in a condo or you're in an apartment and then that's part of the rent or it's part of your association fees, you may not have a choice what company you can use. So you may be limited, and you may be paying for your cable TV basic within those fees, so you're paying for it anyway. So cutting that out isn't going to help you, but you might want to do some streaming to get some additional TV if, again, it fits and if the budget is right on it. It may cost you much more money to do it that way, so streaming may not be for you. Or to get the right services and the right combinations of things may end up costing you more than what cable would cost for your particular location. So these are all things to consider when you're doing this. Like I said, this isn't an easy thing, and each of us have individual wants, desires, needs, and then what's available to us, and what plans, what services, and so on put together may not fit. You may not find the right one. You may not find the right combination. Again, these are some of the service providers that are out there for your internet. Now, this map I found very interesting. 23.4 million Americans in rural communities lack any broadband or high-speed internet access at all. And in the U.S., that's about 99.73% does have access, but it's still a sizable number of people don't. And what's happened is that Microsoft has partnered with the Network Business System with a plan to eliminate rural broadband gap over a 5-year span. So just this past September, the two companies are going to expand and bring internet service to areas in Iowa, Illinois, and South Dakota. So some of you who are watching this right now, this might affect you, and where you might say, I can't get any broadband now. Somewhere in the very near future, you may be able to. So as I said, again, this is changing quite rapidly and fluidly. This, I think, is a great chart because most people say, well, how fast of internet speed do I need? This chart especially, and by the way, there's a link to this chart in the references, but is whether you're doing a light use, moderate use, high use, or very high use, and then how many devices you have on it. But think in terms of your devices of your phones are using the Wi-Fi, you're using an Amazon, uh, the Alexa, you're using the Google device, you're using one of those devices, you're using lights, turning on and off, the Internet of Things, and so on. So depending on how many devices you have, might make a difference in how whether you consider yourself light use, moderate use, and then again how many devices. But this is a really good chart to kind of determine. And it really, a lot of times you think, well, gee, I really need 150 megabits per second. Well, most people don't. I use it because I'm doing these kind of presentations on a regular basis to user groups all over the country, and so I need the speed and the ability to do things while Robin's in the living room watching TV, and my phone is still accessing the internet, and so on. So so I'm using 150 megabits is all I'm using. I could have up to a gigabit, but I don't. So this is a very good chart to pay attention to. This is something that I just found in the last couple of days, that the share of viewing hours between this year and last year, between 2018 quarter 3 and 2017 quarter 3, that's how up to date this is. But the connected TV share is 56%, and the mobile is 25%. Well, I thought I had some explanation of that, but it was it's changed. It was 27, so your mobile and your connected TV actually has they're changing on quite rapidly. And so a lot of people are now watching TV on their screens, or they're connecting and doing streaming. So it varies. And this I thought was a good chart to show that Roku's got pretty much, it's got 40% of the equipment that people are using to do streaming. Roku is 40% of it. Fire TV is 18%. Chromecast is 5%, your Apple TV is 10%, and then your PlayStation is 12%, and your Xbox is 11%, and then there's a few others. But so that's why people talk about Roku more than the other items that are out there to be able to stream with. Now, I mentioned I'm also going to talk about phones a little bit. Some of the big services that are out there are Vonage, Ring Central, and then there's a few others on the right. I had Vonage, and Vonage was costing me about $20 a month. They worked great. They gave me a phone number. They gave me a piece of equipment. I plugged a phone into it. It worked through the internet, and it was wonderful. However, this one, there's all kinds of business services that are out there as well. Ring Central, Vonage, and so on. I'm not going to spend any time on this, just to show you that if you have a business need, there's also ways to do your telephone service through the internet, as opposed to having a wire come in from your telephone company. Then there's Google Voice. I've been a Google Voice user for years, but a few years ago, I took Google Voice one step farther and made it my main number on my home phone. And what I did is I paired it with something called an OB-Hi box. So Google Voice works with this OB-Hi. And this is what it looks like. As you can see, I purchased it in 2015. I've been using it for over 3 years now. And what it does, it plugs in. Number one, it needs a power. It needs power, so I have to plug it into the wall. It plugs into my router, so it connects to the internet, and a phone plugs into it. And then using software and my Google Voice account, using the software that OB-Hi has, they talk to each other, and then with my phone plugged into it, I have a base unit. Let's see. Well, it'll come up. You'll see some pictures. I have a base unit and then some wireless pieces that go with it. And that's plugged, the base unit is plugged into the OB-Hi, so it rings the phones all through the house. So it's coming through the internet. Now, I also, a few years ago, actually 6 years ago, I think I bought my first Magic Jack. They used to advertise all the time on TV. I don't see them as much. The most recent model is the Magic Jack Go. It costs $35, and that includes 1 year of service. And you can see on the back of it, there is a network connector and a phone connector. The network connector, again, plugs into your router. When Magic Jack first came out, you had to plug it into a TV. I'm sorry, not a TV. You had to plug it into your computer. Your computer had to be on to use it. When this model came out about 5 years ago, you didn't have to do that. You could plug it into your router and never turn on your computer, only the first time in order to set it all up. And then you can, it does have a USB plug at one end. Well, that comes with an adapter that plugs into the into USB and then goes to a wall socket to give you your power. So you don't have to get power from a computer either. So when the computer's off, it doesn't affect it. And then the telephone line is where you plug a telephone into it. And so again, if somebody calls you on your Magic Jack number, you pick up a telephone and you can talk to them. Or it'll work through your computer using some software that they have. They also have software that will work on a phone, or in my case, I have it on my Chromebook. My Chromebook is Wi-Fi only, so as long as I'm where Wi-Fi is, I can run the Magic Jack software, have it connected to my account, and I can dial out, use the microphone and speakers that are in my Chromebook, and actually use the Chromebook as a telephone. And if I want, I can have it on, and people can and give them that number, and that number will actually ring on my Chromebook as well.
Hewie, just want to remind you, we're running out of time.
Okay, I'm just about to finish up. Again, $35. Renewal is $89 for 3 years. When I did it 5 years ago, it was $99 for 5 years, or $20 a year. So it's gone up $10 a year. And I'm going to have to renew this year. These are what my phones look like. Again, my resource, here's are some resources. Again, these are all on my list. But these are some of the resources I used. This information is very fluid. So a lot of what I talked about today in 2 days may be out of date. Please remember to fill out the survey. And here's how to get a hold of me, info@hewie.net. At the bottom is that survey address, so you can write it down while we have any questions. Any questions from anybody?
I got to unmute it. The one guy said he didn't know if it's still the case, but Magic Jack TOS used to give them the right to access any info on your PC.
Well, you're not plugging it into the PC anymore, so I don't think that's correct any longer.
Okay. And Sylvia wants to know if you travel to different communities to give presentations.
If it's very local, I do. Otherwise, I can do it the same way as I'm doing it here. I do these kind of presentations. I have some that I do on Chromebooks. I do a lot of Windows presentations. I do a Windows special interest group to the Orlando group once a month, and I live 120 miles away, so I do the Windows special interest group, and then I record them, and they are on Hewie.net under the WinSig choice on that website. So if you go to Hewie.net, you'll see those, and I can do presentations to your group. I can do this presentation. I can do others as well.
Okay, one last question, and then we'll give everybody a 5-minute break. If you already have a Magic Jack, an old one, do you have to buy the new one to use without the computer?
It depends on how old the one it is. As I said, I bought the one I have 5 years ago. So it does not required, but it has to have the ability to plug in directly to your router. If it has to use a USB port, then it has to plug into a computer. Your computer has to be on, and you have to have the software installed, and then use either a microphone or a headset